Today's question comes from a mom who asks, I'm wondering if there's any specific financial moves I should do before the new year starts. Any tax related things I may not know about? We're new to budgeting and I'd love suggestions to help make this next year a little easier. Yes, there are quite a few things that you can do. If we haven't hung out before, my name is Brianna. I'm a fellow mom and a money coach. But I do just want to caveat that with saying that I am not a tax professional. So for your unique situation, please consult with a qualified tax professional because laws do consistently, well, they constantly change. So anything that today that we may be discussing, it may change the year in the years ahead, depending on when you're watching or listening to this episode. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into today's conversation. If you have a flexible spending account or an FSA or a dependent care account or a DCA, it has a use it or lose it by December 31st. So if you have any remaining funds in there or any expenses that you need to submit for reimbursement, please make sure you do so before December 31st. Now, if you have an health savings account or an HSA, now is a great time to make sure that you have actually met any contribution thresholds that you may qualify for. And again, this is going to be dependent on your unique situation. So make sure you either look at the IRS website for most recent details or discuss this with a qualified tax professional. If you are eligible for an HSA, an FSA, or a DCA through your employer, sometimes your HR can be super helpful, or they may be able to refer you to the plan administrator for any of these accounts. Now, one thing to be aware of is if you had an HSA account, but you may not have had it or were eligible to contribute during the entire 12-month portion of the year, just make sure that you are taking that into consideration when you're making your contribution, because you may not fully qualify for the whole 12-month contribution limit. So for example, if you were only eligible for an HSA for 10 months out of the 12-month year, you may only be able to make up to a certain amount of a contribution for what is considered your maximum allowable contribution for the year of which you're contributing into your HSA account. Otherwise, you could face a potential tax penalty. Now, in the future, this may change, but that is how it currently is as far as I am aware. Now, this is also a great time that if you're going to use any of your HSA eligible funds, to go ahead and gather up any of those receipts and submit for reimbursement. Now, some people do prefer not to accept or submit for reimbursement through their HSA because those funds do tend to roll over year to year and it can be a huge tax savings, but evaluate whether or not that is most appropriate for you given your unique situation. If you have a side gig or if you started a new business during the last year, make sure you're aware of what your state's income deadlines are. While a lot of states have an income tax deadline that correlates with the federal tax deadline of April 15th, that is not the case for every state out there, and some states require any income tax be actually paid and received by the state by December 31st. If you're unsure about the laws in your state, make sure you check your state government's website. Some states will even accept tax payments through their website. Or again, talk with a qualified tax professional for your situation, especially for the state in which you live. If you support any charitable organizations, making a before year-end contribution is a great time to do it, especially if you are planning to itemize on your upcoming tax return. Now, for a large majority of people, having the standard deduction is going to be what they most likely are going to qualify for. But if it is something that you're right on the brink, making sure you get that charitable donation contribution in before December 31st is going to be a great benefit, possibly to your tax return. Let's talk about retirement investing next. Even though you have until April 15th to make any retirement contributions, now is a great time to evaluate whether or not you're on track to meet your contribution goals. So for example, let's say that you are trying to max out your Roth IRA and possibly you had to miss a few contributions that you wanted to do, or maybe your standard contribution was a little bit less than what you ideally would like like to be at for this year. Now is a great time to evaluate if you could make an additional contribution or if you can change your contribution thresholds through your employer or through a third party, Roth administrator, and partner with them to evaluate whether or not you're actually on track to meet your contribution goals. Now, do keep in mind that there are IRS contribution limits based off of your age and a number of different factors. So make sure you're not contributing over what that contribution limit is. Otherwise, you could face a penalty very similar to contributing more into an HSA account. If you're not eligible to contribute the full threshold, you could end up receiving a pretty big tax penalty for doing so. So if you do identify that you're going to be a little bit behind maybe contributing to your Roth IRA, now is a great time to see if maybe you can adjust your budget so that way you can actually max out that retirement account by April 15th. Most employees will receive a cost of living wage increase or perhaps a year-end bonus around this time. This is a great time to consider increasing any contributions towards your retirement accounts just by 1%. Since you're already receiving a small adjustment in your wage, taking a small portion of that, even just 1%, and contributing it towards your retirement accounts can make a huge difference in the long run. Let's discuss making some adjustments to your budget. Now, with Christmas and the holiday season now over, you'll have a really good idea of how much you spent on this last Christmas, as well as how many people you are buying for and how much you actually spent on each individual person. Plan ahead for the next year by taking that total amount and instead of dividing by 12, divide by 10 or 11. Most of us start holiday shopping around Black Friday, and having that total amount already prepared and set aside before you even go shopping is going to help alleviate a lot of stress, especially if there's unexpected changes to whom you need to buy gifts for, or maybe an increase or adjustment in how much you want to spend on each person. You will have a little extra margin in your budget come December where you could increase a small amount when it comes to your holiday spending. If you're anticipating a huge life event with increased expenses in certain categories of your budget, start making those adjustments to your budget now so you already have that idea of what it feels like to live within the current margins. If, for example, you know that you're going to be expecting a baby and that's going to mean you're going to have additional childcare expenses or additional people on your insurance plan, go ahead and price out what some of those changes are and work them into your budget. Even though you're not going to be spending that full amount on those expenses just yet, set that aside into a small savings sinking fund so you can actually spend that on your baby once they're here. But when your baby comes and those expenses are part of your everyday life, you will already feel adjusted to what your lifestyle will look like with all of those expenses. Now, if you know you're going to need childcare and you don't know really where to start, or if you're looking for different ways to cut childcare costs, I do have 2 different episodes to address both of those topics. I'll link them up in the details of this episode so you can watch them if you think they may be helpful. This is also a great time to evaluate what our next year's financial goals are and to make any plans for the year ahead. Do you know if you're going to have an upcoming vacation? Are you going to be going to any weddings, big celebrations that may be coming up that are going to be additional expenses? Do you need to purchase a new vehicle or are you planning to move? Now, sometimes when we're evaluating what our financial goals are and they conflict with some of our lifestyle priorities or values, that can make it really challenging to set our financial goals and determine really how to make adjustments to our lifestyle to get to where we want to be. If you're interested in kind of looking a little bit further into this topic, let me know in the comments below and we can discuss that in a future episode. But if you have anything else that you like to do as part of your year-end financial evaluation and prep for the year ahead, let me know in the comments and I would love to continue this conversation there. Until we hang out again, create a home your heart loves.